And welcome back to Open Line. Thank you so much for joining us. Our topic tonight, climate change. We have 3 local activists with us tonight, and phone lines lighting up here, so we want to get back to the phones, get more of your comments and questions. You are live on Open Line. Is this Jack?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, thanks for calling.
Yeah, some of the earlier callers were just spouting utter nonsense, in my opinion. The simple facts of the matter are we as individuals can do small things, but the major forces of technology are all caught up with our large corporate power and our government power, which is generally speaking subservient to corporate power. So if we were able to get cars tomorrow morning that got 500 miles to the gallon, they wouldn't be released because they would reduce the level of profit for the carbon industry, oil companies, etc. And until people wake up and do the research into the technology that is already available in the areas of carbon sequestration, alternative energy technologies, and I don't mean just solar and what have you, and the industrial scale possibilities that have already been created and have been around for many years, nothing is going to happen. One of the leaders in this field was a former Apollo astronaut and professor of physics at Princeton named Brian O'Leary. And he did research into energy technology and what could be done if we would stop preventing these new breakthrough technologies from coming into the mainstream. And until we have those large-scale industrial changes in technology, what we as individuals can do will only ever be at the margin. So we have to look the lion in the face, notice that the jaws are open, get the facts straight, and take action to pressure our government and our corporate leaders, neither of which are working to solve these problems at this time, and force them to do the changes necessary, because they're not going to do it on their own. And I might add that this does not mean we have to get rid of cows or we all have to drive micro-sized cars. It means that the technologies that are available today need to be allowed into the public domain and utilized for the benefit of all. And we should be leading the world, not worrying about what China's doing, not worrying about what India's doing. We should take a leadership role in the technological arena to bring the technologies that are possible out into the light of day.
Great. Thank you, Jack. We appreciate your call.
Yeah.
Any comments, reactions to his ideas there?
He's right. I mean, I agree with his points. It's true that the federal government and many governments tend to be slaves to capitalism, and unfortunately the technologies that are available to give us a greener world are being withheld. And yeah, that he was spot on with that.
The only thing I would add is that we want this to be a just transition. So we don't want to leave behind the people who work in the fossil fuel industry or people who work in the coal mines. And so we need to not leave them behind when we switch to this, these new technologies. We need to find them, a workplace that they can, live in and work in.
Okay, fair enough. All right, let's take one more call here. Maria, you are live on Open Line. Can you hear me?
Okay, thank you for taking my call.
Yeah.
I wanted to say to the panel, I want to hear the answer. Channel 5, Channel 4, 17, they always explain to us the weather that it was happening 50 years ago, 100 years ago, and it was hotter than it is today and yesterday. So how are they going to explain that when there's no pollution in those days? What make the climate so hot? It's something that God wanted to be that way, and thank God we got Trump, that he's a smart president to take care of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for calling. All right. Any reaction?
Just like to point out the weather is not climate. The climate's the trends that we're experiencing, and if you look at the data, it's very clear. The temperatures are trending that way. It may not seem like it when you look at like the day to day, but we're looking at trends.
Yeah, I think it's impossible to use any anecdotal piece of evidence, whether it's a day here or one region, to either prove or disprove the greater trend, which is not very controversial, that we're seeing a climate crisis.
Okay, let's go back to the phones here. Ryan, you are live on Open Line. Thanks for calling us. Can you hear me?
Hey.
Yeah, hey, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask the question of the panel about what the city's role in addressing this is. Something that comes to mind is, as gentrification has happened basically in all the surrounding neighborhoods of Nashville, that's corresponded with some bigger houses with higher energy demand, and a lot less tree cover. So I wonder how, and in the process, as weather is, more extreme on the hot end, and then some days extreme cold in what are supposed to be moderate seasons, how do we address how energy bills will be much higher? For example, this last energy bill from TVA, the total amount was significantly higher than ever before, and we can all remember how many days of 95 plus degree heat we had for over such a long period of time. So what is the city's role in addressing this problem as it relates to the energy burden on the people that live here?
Okay, yeah, thanks for calling in. You guys have talked about starting even at the local level, so what can the city do?
I think that there is some legislature to, improve the weatherization of homes would definitely help, building standards, but also not leaving behind people who can't afford that. So, subsidizing the weatherization and subsidizing building standards, but also there has to be, I think TVA needs to accept renewable energies like solar and wind more widespread than they are right now too, which is not necessarily a local level because TVA controls a lot of this region, but that's where like the big picture needs to go for sure.
And he mentioned the trees also. That was an interesting point. With so much new development coming into the city, are trees being knocked down? Does that affect air quality? Does it affect, kind of just overall quality of life in the city? Have you noticed a difference in that regard?
I know that personally. I have like a severe asthma and severe lung issues, and I actually have to be on a drug that costs $7,000 without insurance to be able to breathe in this city. If I didn't have access to that drug, I would not be living here in Nashville today. So I personally experience it, and I've been using what's left of my oxygen to fight for this because it's very important.
Wow. Okay. All right, let's go back to the phones. We have Ryan. Ryan, you are live on Open Line. Go ahead.
Hey.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Ask that question. Hey, I guess I could add another thing.
Yeah,
to that
sure.
topic.
Go ahead.
Let's see. So, I do think we have a responsibility to invest in communities as far as the jobs that we want to create. So in Nashville, why not take a leadership role the way the caller before talked about the U.S., not necessarily worrying about what China is doing, not necessarily worrying about what India is doing, but just take the initiative ourselves because that's going to be better for us in the long run. So how can we really invest in the young people, the middle-aged people, the working-age people in this city and make it a beacon for jobs that are for the future and infrastructure, green jobs, etc.
Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Any thoughts?
I think a lot of projects come to mind, a lot of which also just improve the infrastructure of our city, like a large-scale public transportation project that could alleviate some of the air quality while also making it easier for people to get into work on some of the major arteries of the city. There are a bunch of other places in which the city could invest in some solutions that could solve air quality, accessibility, affordable housing, multifamily affordable housing.
To add right now, I know that there is a coalition of nonprofit and activist groups that are fighting for 33,000 more affordable homes because apparently in the next 5 years, 33,000 families are going to be displaced by all this development. So affordable homes are very key to this too.
All right. Did you want to jump in?
You know, at the same time that we look on the global scale and we look towards what the destruction that's occurring, you know, across the seas, and we also need to look at, like Carolina and Eli have said, like what is going on directly in our own homes, in our own hometown. And the caller mentioned gentrification and displacement, and that's very true, and it will impact the climate of Nashville, and these new high-rises being built and taking down our natural trees and, you know, just things that make our ecosystem livable will have very negative impacts. And the fact that we constantly are looking towards, you know, the polar bears and the penguins being displaced, but we're not looking at the human beings living in our own city being displaced, and people that have been suffering under air pollution in like Edge Hill and other government subsidized housing in our own city should be something that's addressed first. And so I urge those in office, I urge our new mayor to really look into that and to declare that a state of emergency, that we have people that are like 5 miles away that can't breathe.
All right, very good. We'll be going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Open Line right after this. Stay with us.